Welcome to the last video of the Google Docs series, Google Docs 5. In this video, you're going to learn how to find and replace words in your document, and then how to share the document in different ways with people, then how to navigate through your folders in Google Drive, and then how to share folders in Google Drive. Okay, the first thing we're going to do, the first task will be I want you to find and replace unacceptable words for English class. So if you've used a lowercase I or vague words like stuff, or those of you who were here last year will know not to use any of those banned words, said, thought, go, went. You're supposed to use more vivid verbs, stuff like that. Then I could show you a really quick way to find whether or not you've used those words in your document. So you'll want to go up to Edit, Find and Replace, and you can type in any word you want it to find. So for instance, if I know that I have a problem typing lowercase i's when it should be capital I, then I'd want to type it in. But do you see what it did? It actually is finding every single lowercase I used. So I could spend a time going through all 50 or 72 of them, but instead I'm just going to, for the sake of time, skim through it because I know where I did it. And I see, oh, right here, I have done the wrong I. So what you'd want to do, actually, I think I do have to go through them all. There we go. I want to replace it with an uppercase I. And I could say replace all, but what that will do is replace every single I in my paper with an uppercase I. And I only really want to replace this one. So I'm going to just click on replace, and notice how it replaced the lowercase I with an uppercase I. So you could do that for other words too. Let's try stuff, because I know I put that word in here. So I want to find the word stuff. Okay, it only found one example of it. And I could choose to replace it with something else more specific. But in this case, I see that I should just eliminate it because I'm very wordy anyway. This summer, I spent much of my time relaxing. So I'm just going to get rid of all those words, and now it makes sense. So you can do that looking through. It's a really easy way to look through. For instance, in some of the papers, you're not allowed to use the word I at all. You're supposed to use the words like the reader or one, the word one instead of I. So that's a quick way that I've shown some older kids to do that. Okay, then you'll also see some red squiggly lines sometimes, and that just means that Google's telling you it thinks you spelled these words wrong. So I'm going to right mouse click over top of the red squiggle. It usually will offer me a suggestion, and I'll say, yes, I did mean to spell that word. Sometimes names, though, will look like they're spelled wrong, but that's because Google doesn't have that name in the dictionary. So if you know that you spelled that name correctly, you can just leave it as it is. Okay, so that's how to find and replace words. Now, sometimes I'll ask you to work on a project with a partner. So what you're going to want to do is one of your tasks tells you to share it with one person. So you'll click on the share button on the upper right hand corner, and you'll type the name of a person here that you want to share it with. So I already have done that, so let me just take that off, and then I'll share it again so you can see. Okay, so I'm going to share it with my group mate because we're working on the paper together. We're trying to have a group project, and Miss McDivitt, our teacher, told us to develop a brochure, and we both want to work at the same on the same document at the same time. And so I would share it with her, and I would give editing privileges to my partner, and then I would send it to them. So you would see that this person who you shared it with will be on it at the same time. There would be two separate cursors, your cursor and their cursor. And you'll see that there's a little icon that will appear up here that will show you that somebody else is on it if they have it open at the same time as you. If they don't have it open, then it won't show that they're on it. But if they have it open at the same time as you, a little icon will appear up here with their avatar in it or their profile picture. And then down here, a chat window will appear, and you can chat with them in real time. So you don't have to be on the phone if you don't want to. Or if you're in a study hall or a computer class and you're working on this during lab or in the computer lab during a study hall and the teacher doesn't want you to talk, you could just be typing and chatting with each other about it. Now, don't abuse the chat feature. Kids have in the past abused it where they're just goofing off and chatting instead of actually doing their project. So make sure that that's not you. All right, so that allows that person to edit everything you do. Now, if they weren't a partner on a project with you and you gave them editing privileges, which you still can, that person who is editing would want to go into suggestion mode. So for instance, if I'm a peer editor and I see that, oh, you didn't put the author's whole name or someone's whole name, I would make a suggestion that you should put Elizabeth there. So notice it's highlighted in green, and when you would see it later, you'd have permission to either yes, accept it, or no, reject it. So I usually do this with students' papers myself when I'm looking through them, like, oh, you need a comma here, or how about you add this detail here. So I'll do comments for the person, but I'll also do suggestions for them too. Okay, so that's one thing. If you're peer editing someone's paper, you should not be physically changing anything. You should only be in suggestion mode when you're doing that, okay? All right, so another way to share your document is to share it, but only give them commenting privileges. So for instance, let's say I'm letting Su Yen look at this paper, but I only really want Su Yen to comment on it. I don't want Su Yen to make any suggestions like right in the text, which I can understand. Sometimes you don't trust people enough to have access to your work. In the editing mode, they can change whatever they want. And sometimes you just don't trust people like that. So you could let them have the comment. You could only let them comment. So Su Yen, in this case, would only be able to, she would not be able to click on and change anything. She'd only be able to comment on it like we've shown you how to do in the past. Okay, and another thing you can do is actually let the person just view it. And this is what I do often, like with my syllabus or my seating chart. When I don't want you guys to comment on it, I don't want you to move things around on it with the editing feature. I just want you to be able to see it. You can just have someone view it, and then they'll only be able to see it. They won't be able to click on it. When you submit things in Google Classroom and turn things in, immediately your privileges have been revoked on your document to Can View, which means that you can't change anything on your paper after you've submitted it unless you unsubmit. But then be careful, if you unsubmit and you miss the deadline of when something's due, it will mark it as late. So in Google Classroom, when you turn something in, make sure that you've turned in your final draft by the due date. But whenever you turn something in, you can always unsubmit it, and then you can always resubmit until the due date comes, right? So that's why sometimes kids are like, I can't work on my paper, and that's when they've turned it in, and that's because it turns it immediately for you into view only. That's just a little side note for Google Classroom. And that allows me as a teacher to grade something without you going back in and changing it while I'm grading it. Okay, so that's how you can share files. Let's go back to Google Drive. So you're going to want to, when you complete this task, I want you to share with two people. One person, a group mate, that's someone in your group or your team that you're on, give them editing privileges. Another person in the class, you give them peer editing privileges so they can just comment. All right, so I want to see that when I look at your document, I want to see that that's what's happened. Okay, now I'm going to take you into organizing your folders. And I really recommend, if you haven't done this before, that you actually organize your folders really well in Google Drive. Otherwise, you'll end up like me, I started off really well organizing everything, and now notice that there are things here that aren't organized. So I'm going to move some of this stuff and show you how to move documents into folders that they go in. So these are obviously yearbook documents that I should have put in my yearbook folder, but I didn't. So I could drag them and don't let go. Hold on to them until you find the folder that you want them to be in. So you could do it that way, and obviously I'm having a hard time finding yearbook right now. Another way would be, let them go right here, another way would be to go over to your three dots and click Move To. And when I click Move To, then I have more time to sort through things I want to find. So if I want to find the yearbook folder, I can click and look for them. So let me do that. All right, and I see there's the yearbook, and I can click and say Move Here. And notice they've disappeared from my list, my master list, because they've been put into a folder. Now I'm going to undo that because technically they're not in the right folder right now. You can usually undo things pretty much right away. This I can move. Let's move this to summer reading because I know that's a pretty easy thing to find. Probably I spoke too soon, huh? And I'll show you how to organize your files so they're easier to find. There you go, summer reading. So I'm going to just drop it off into summer reading. All right, again, I'm going to undo it right now because I want to put that somewhere else. But that just shows you how you can organize things pretty quickly. All right, notice how you can organize things by the date it was modified. So if I want things that were modified, so it'll divide it by files or folders and then by files. So notice how it puts it from least to the latest that I worked on it. Okay, or you can organize by name. Again, it's still gonna separate it from separate it within files and folders, different ones. But I like mine to be last modified. That way I know the most current things I'm working on are right here, usually. Okay, so that's one way. So you should go through and organize your Google Drive and think of it like a filing cabinet where you have big categories are the files, folders here, and then the little things would fit, little files would fit inside of it. So have an organizational structure. Now I want you to share a folder, so I'm going to have you create a folder. So go to New, Folder, and I just want you to type in your last name and say Create, and then I want you to share that folder with me. So there's the folder, and you're going to go up to your little Share, and you're going to type in S. McDivitt, and you'll share it with me. You can let me have editing privileges and say Send. Okay, so that will be your completed task. Once you've done all these things, you will have completed the series of Google Docs 1 through 5. Enjoy!